Mercedes' season didn't start as expected at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and it does seem like the Silver Arrows will have a bad campaign yet again. After all that positive feedback from testing and free practices, and even the great start from Russell, who managed to pass Leclerc for P2, at the end the podium was far away, which is terrible for a team that strives to be among the top two teams on the grid. Could we see another below average season, a one last torturing for the seven-time world champion before he moves away? New season, new problems for Mercedes, as both Russell and Hamilton were far from the podium fight at the Bahrain International Circuit as the 2024 season kicked off. The real picture wasn't showcased in qualifying when George Russell finished P3 and had a really nice lap. However, it was Hamilton who started P9 on Saturday, and the poor qualifying result for him, 9th, is the lowest he's qualified for a season opener since the 2009 Australian Grand Prix, didn't dampen his enthusiasm about the new Mercedes. One he'd said on Thursday finally felt like a race car again. Well, the race car did not deliver on race day, as even though Russell at first showed glimpses of his abilities, overtaking Leclerc, still the Silver Arrows pair did little to no damage in this race as they ended P5 and P7. It does seem like the whole positive vibe around the Mercedes paddock was maybe a bit over the top, because the team is not at the right spot at the start of this season. Not to mention how Hamilton reported a flurry of problems, the strangest of which was that his seat was broken. How can the man's seat be broken if that's the first thing Mercedes were trying to fix with the W15? And that was one of Hamilton's primary complaints last year, to move the cockpit 100mm ahead in comparison to the W14. However, we are not car design experts, and it seems like maybe by fixing one problem, Mercedes created an additional two, because it requires a total redesign of the chassis. Now, looking at it from this point of view, it does become very clear as to why Hamilton decided to leave the team. But to be honest, the 2024 Challenger was built according to his wishes, or to put it more lightly, the team listened to his feedback and designed the car with him in mind. But you might ask yourself, if that's the case, then why are we seeing these problems now, immediately after the start of the season? Does it turn out that Hamilton's feedback was wrong all along, or did the engineers at Brackley fail to do their jobs properly? Talking about the race, Hamilton wasn't overly disappointed with starting P9, as we mentioned, because he had stated that the car setup was for the race pace, so improving on 2 spots is actually a success for the 7-time world champion, in comparison to Russell, who dropped 2 spots at the end. But Russell's impressive start was undone by having to switch focus to nursing a power unit issue caused by a cooling miscalculation, which required lifting and coasting measures to combat rising temperatures. The engine gremlins, as some media outlets called them, also disrupted power unit customer team Williams. Both Alex Albon and Logan Sargent suffered, with the latter additionally coming to a stop with a temporary steering wheel electronics fault. Asked by Motorsport.com to explain the reliability woes, Mercedes Motorsport boss Wolff explained, pre-season testing was pretty good. Also, the performances on Thursday and on Friday were encouraging. The car was stable, was good. The drivers like it. When we started the race on the soft tyre, everything pretty much was to plan, and then unfortunately we had to start pulling the engine more than we expected. We can't understand yet where that came from. We have one of our customer teams, Williams, who had the same issue. The other two, McLaren and Aston Martin, not. That was unexpected, and from then on, if you switch 0.3 to 4 seconds of power unit performance off, then you have to lift and coast on top. So I think at times, probably altogether, it was 5 or 6 tenths of a second that we couldn't take from what the car had in it. Therefore, it just wasn't great fun. At times, we were literally not a few degrees, but like 10 degrees running over what we thought we should be. But if this is a problem now, we have a race in the desert next week as well. As a matter of fact, many races will be driven on high temperatures. So could we even see Mercedes dealing with this issue multiple times over this season? What's even worse for them is that now they can't ask for feedback from Hamilton, a man who knows what he wants from a car, as he will not have a say in the car's upgrades throughout this season. No matter how you look at this, Mercedes will be in a bad spot because Hamilton's knowledge will be Ferrari's starting, I'd say even this spring. And if Russell doesn't manage to pull out the maximum this car has to offer, then it's same old for the Brackley side. It really just boils down to Mercedes completely failing this era of regulations after completely dominating the previous one. But Russell is still optimistic, as he should be, honestly. But is it a sign of desperation and a final grasping of some very thin straws? Despite the issues that stopped his podium charge, the early pace Russell showed, as well as his qualifying effort, was enough to provide optimism moving forward. We probably made a really good first couple of laps, added Russell. It is really difficult to say whether true pace would have fallen out because we had to turn the engine down, do lifting and coasting, which had an effect on the tyres, so it was a downward spiral. I think the podium would have been out of reach, but for sure we could have given it a better go. The challenges Mercedes faced at the first Grand Prix of 2024 could be directly linked to the new design of their car, particularly the inlets of the side pods leading to the radiators, an area where significant changes were made with the W15 model. And while there's still much to learn and refine in this aspect, the initial indications have been very disappointing, contrary to what Mercedes had hoped for after the initial days of the racing weekend. However, amidst these setbacks, there are still some positive aspects for the Silver Arrows to consider following the race. One bright spot is that McLaren appears to be less competitive than anticipated, at least for now, despite finishing the 2023 season strongly. But it's worth noting that Bahrain isn't a circuit where McLaren expected to showcase their full potential, and here we also have Aston Martin, who are also encountering challenges, which may not pose a significant threat to Mercedes in the near future. It is, nevertheless, essential to remain cautious as both McLaren and Aston Martin have demonstrated their ability to make rapid improvements, a contrast to Mercedes, which has faced ongoing challenges since the start of the 2022 season. Hamilton also expressed much optimism going forward, even with the misfortune of having to sacrifice battery power in order to cool down the engine. "I was catching at the end and feeling racy," insisted Hamilton, "but the gap was so big. I lost so much at the beginning of the race. I feel good. I don't feel downbeat. It was a super average race." But what I feel is that the last couple of years we've had all these problems and we have spent several races trying to undo all those problems, trying to figure out what those problems were, as opposed to now we have a platform that we can start adding bricks to. So now it is a building process from here, and I think we're a great team. Mercedes' 5th and 7th place finishes in the Bahrain Grand Prix, considering the context of the past 2 years, were not unexpected per se, but nevertheless disappointing, and they felt deflating due to the optimism surrounding their winter advancements and the drivers' improved understanding with the new car. This wasn't merely a matter of lacking speed, it reflected a team grappling with persistent challenges and internal hurdles, and while we hope that these issues will be quickly resolved and the true potential of the car will shine in Jeddah, the race highlighted Mercedes' ongoing struggles to make significant progress. As we said, fortunately for Mercedes, two of their toughest competitors, McLaren and Aston Martin, find themselves in a very similar predicament, facing a steep learning curve ahead. However, the performance of Carlos Sainz and the Ferrari highlights the stark contrast, showcasing the Maranello team's superior foundation, and Sainz' proficiency in manoeuvring the SF24 shows that Ferrari has an advantage, potentially securing his future in the sport beyond 2025. In this context, Mercedes is in a very delicate position where they cannot leverage the expertise of one of the most seasoned drivers on the grid, who happens to be a 7-time world champion, 6 of which were achieved with Mercedes. And despite how hard they try, they can't do anything to fix their issues. And who knows, the help of other veterans like Alonso or Vettel might be just what they need. Do you think this is just a bump on the road for Mercedes and they'll improve? Or is it just another average season ahead for the Silver Arrows? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you very soon in the next video.